All right, good morning, and welcome back to Charlotte Street Computers Training. Today we are looking at Mac Basics number 2. Let's just dive in. I'm going to head up to the Apple menu again. So we're coming down to System Preferences, and we're going to be using the System Preferences as kind of an outline of things to talk about today. As the name suggests, this is a place where you can tweak the Mac to be more according to your likes and needs. That's why they call it preferences. Apple has pre-populated this section with things that they think are going to fit the most number of people, but they've given us plenty of liberty to change things. But in the case of this class, it also just gives me a chance to talk about certain features. So first of all, System Preferences has changed in Catalina. I am using macOS Catalina, which came out in the fall of last year, 2019. This is the spring of 2020. Catalina introduced the first big change I've seen to the System Preferences panel in 15 to 20 years. So the big thing is they have moved Apple ID information to the very top. And so iCloud and things like that are under the Apple ID menu. We're going to have a whole class on iCloud. iCloud used to be the first item in the third row. They've also shuffled around some of the other settings. So if you have macOS Mojave 10.14 or High Sierra or basically anything before Catalina, yours is going to look a little bit different than mine. But everything that we're going to talk about, or at least most of the things that we're going to talk about, are going to be in the same general vicinity. So we're going to actually start in my second row. If you're in a previous operating system, it'd be the first item in the first row. We're going to start with General, and this one has a lot of things going on in it. So first of all, last year or a year and a half ago with Mojave, they introduced a dark theme. So basically you get to choose between a whole setup that produces a lot less light. It's very good for working at night. It gives you less radiation in your face. And then if you prefer the extra brightness, you can switch over to the light mode. Catalina has thrown in an extra option, and that's the automatic mode. When I just clicked it, it looked like nothing happened. And that's because it's about 9:34 a.m. in the morning, and according to the Mac, it should be in light mode. So it will switch over to dark mode as soon as the sun goes down, and then switch back over to the light mode when the sun comes up. So Mojave does not have the extra choice of the automatic switching. You have to basically pick between the two. And if I had to pick one of them, I'd probably go with the light mode. But now that I've got this automatic switching, that's the one I'm choosing. So you get to decide which one you're going to like the best. The next one, this is a lot more cosmetic, whereas this one is way more than skin deep. I mean, if you choose dark mode and you open an Apple app, let's choose Notes, for example, then everything in all the different Apple apps is going to be dark. When you make that choice, it is going to be fairly deep as far as the things that are going on. This next one, the accent color, this one's very, very cosmetic, and it's just basically changing the colors of the little choice buttons. When you come up to menus, the things that you roll over will be the color that you choose in this list here. Just, very cosmetic choice. It will also affect, what you choose here will also affect the highlight color. And what that is, let's switch back to blue here for a moment. And I'm going to come down to my downloads and pick a document that has some text in it. Just opened a whole bunch of documents from probably my last class. But let's say if I wanted to highlight this 1-800-MY-APPLE number, which is Apple's support number, by the way. So if you bought Apple Care on your Mac, you've got 3 years of phone support with Apple, so don't forget that. It's 1-800-MY-APPLE is the easiest one for me to remember, the number to call. But anyway, I highlighted that text. I dragged with my finger here. I pressed down with my thumb, and I'm dragging with my finger, and I dragged across that. So basically, that's highlighting something. And so with that choice, let's go back to System Preferences down here at the bottom. Whatever color you choose here is going to be the color of the highlighting. So again, very cosmetic, but you get to tweak this the way you want it to be. All right, so I'm switching back to blue because that's the way I like it. All right, sidebar icon size. Let me go ahead and quit some of these up. Let me quit text edit here. Let's see. I'm going to save and quit. All right, sidebar icon size. There's basically three choices, and when you buy a brand new Mac, it is set to medium. And so we looked at a sidebar last week in the Finder. I'm going to go ahead and pull the Finder up. And this is my sidebar for the Finder. It's got my favorites in it. It has hard drives that are plugged up to my Mac, and it has some tags and things like that. So that's the sidebar. And if I change this, if I go to small, I can see more things, or maybe see all of them. If I go to large, I won't see them all without scrolling, so I can scroll here, but they're much bigger. And so I have my monitor a couple of feet away, so I personally like the bigger setting. So this setting is actually affecting 5 programs that I know about, and of course we're looking at one of them, the Finder. So even without opening them up, when I'm making these changes, this is also affecting the Mail app, the Photos app, the Music app, or if you have an older operating system, the iTunes app. And so if you have an older operating system, it's 4 things that it's affecting. If you have Catalina, it's 5 things. So the reason for that is iTunes has gone away and has been split up between music, podcasts, and TV. And so TV does not have a sidebar, but the podcast app does. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open those apps. I'm going to open the Mail app, and we will wait for something to happen. Let me click that again. Let's do that. I'm not sure why. There it goes. I'm going to grab it by its bar and kind of move it over here so I can see 2 sidebars at the same time. I'm going to now come over to Photos, and I'm going to grab it by its menu bar and move it over. So there's 3 sidebars. Come over to Music, and there's sidebar. And last, and the least that I use personally, but podcasts, but some of you might be big podcast users. So there are my 5 sidebars. And so now I'm going to pull up System Preferences. They're all set to medium because when I made that change, even when they were not open, it was changing them. So I'm going to switch to small, and you can see all 5 of them changing as I do that. And then my favorite setting again is the large one. I especially like it in Photos because it gives me previews of albums, and I can almost make out what the photo is with that larger size. But it also makes the text bigger and puts a little bit more space in between the things. I personally just like that. So I'm going to go ahead and close a few things here. Close Music. I'm going to leave Photos open to talk about this next topic. I'm going to move it back over so that we can see everything. Back in OS X Lion, so it would have been, we're on macOS. They changed the name a couple of years ago from OS X to macOS. In OS X Lion, that was 10.7, so that was 8 years ago. Apple also released 2 new products, the Magic Mouse, which looks like this. It's a white mouse with a kind of a sheet of glass on the top of it, and it has all these multi-touch gestures that you can do with it. And they released the Magic Trackpad, and this is the Magic Trackpad 2, which is a little bigger than the original one, but it basically has all these different things that it can do. Of course, scrolling is one of the things. So on the Magic Trackpad, which would also be built into your laptop, your MacBook Pro or your MacBook Air, scrolling is something. Let me just go back to this and we'll just hover over the natural scrolling. It is so easy to do on these 2 products. And on the mouse, it's just a 1-finger slide, and on the trackpad, it's 2 fingers. In fact, if I come over here to my Photos and I'm moving with 2 fingers or 1 finger on the mouse. So easy to do that. Someone at Apple decided, going back over to General, that we don't need scroll bars anymore. So anyway, that when you go to the different programs, so for instance, I'm in the Photos app, and I'm going to expand some things that would make it necessary for me to scroll on the left-hand side. As soon as I stop scrolling, the little indicator of where I am in the menu fades out and goes away. Over here in my large pool of photos, you can see a very small little indicator of where I am in the scheme of the 1,000 photos over here, and it's moving as I'm scrolling. But as soon as I stop scrolling, it goes away. I miss the scroll bars. I like the little indicators that show where I am in the scheme of things. So I am allowed to go and change that to always show the scroll bar. And so over here in this sidebar, I have a scroll indicator that shows that I am roughly halfway down the menu. And over here on the far right, I've got a little indicator that I'm roughly a third of the way into my photos. I can also come over and put the tip of my mouse on the indicator and just drag it down to the very bottom to get to the newest photos, or drag it all the way to the top to get to the oldest photos. So having the bar there makes it easier for me to grab that. Or perhaps I'm just wanting to look for a certain place, a certain document, or if this was a long Word document, for instance, and I was looking for a certain paragraph, I could just put the tip of the mouse arrow in the bar and click, and it will basically jump down one paragraph at a time, or in this case one set of photos at a time, and I can scroll through those photos and just skim over them very quickly with my eyes. And I didn't have to be moving the arrow, or I didn't have to be doing more than just a single click. Just click, click, or click, click, and it's going basically down one screen at a time. And that's an option as well. So in this next section, there's an option to jump to the spot that's clicked. So if you're in a long document, whether it's maybe you're writing a book in Word, or in this case I've got 1,000 photos in the Photos app, when I click in the bar, it's jumping to that place in the document, or that place in my collection of photos. So I'm jumping all the way from the latest 2019, 2020 photos, or when I click at the very top, I'm jumping way back to 2006 and 2007. So you get to customize that back in the system preferences. By the way, you have this little option under all the apps to hide other things. Sometimes if you just don't want things to be as busy as they are here, I'm going to hide other things. And so it took away the Photos app and the Mail app and the Finder and things like that. All right, let's move over to the web browser option. So when you buy a Mac, there is only one browser installed, and it's the one that Apple has made and that Apple maintains. They maintain it for the current operating system and the two previous ones. So they're maintaining Safari for Catalina, Mojave, and High Sierra. Sierra, which is now 4 years old, has not received an update to Safari in a while. So they include that with every Mac, and it's the icon with the compass. So anyway, if you prefer a different browser, you could, if you haven't already downloaded those, you could go use Safari. You'd have to use it for a minute anyway to go get Google Chrome or Mozilla Firefox, or the second and third leading browsers. Especially if you have an Android phone, you probably want to be using Google Chrome so that it ties in with what your phone is doing. Maybe you got used to Firefox on your PC. You can have that same exact experience over on the Mac. I've already done that. I've gone, I've opened Safari, and I've, done a search for Google Chrome, and basically I downloaded that Google Chrome web browser. Actually, here's a kind of an ad for it right here. I could just go click that, and then there should be a download link on the next page. Download Chrome. I have already clicked that button. It jumped into my downloads folder down here, and I've installed it. And I've done the same thing with Mozilla. Mozilla.org works, or you can just do a search for Firefox. And I downloaded Firefox right here. So I've installed those things. I'm going to minimize Safari for the time being here. So when I click the launch pad, and we talked a little bit about the launch pad in the last class. Anyway, the rocket ship is a quick way to show all of your apps that you have. Mine has a little indicator down here at the bottom that there's three dots. And so what that's telling me is that I have more than one screen worth of apps. And if I do a little two-finger slide with the trackpad, two-finger slide, I can slide between those different screens, and you can see the little indicator down there changing. Over on the third screen, by the way, it's just a one-finger slide with the mouse. So there's my Google Chrome, there's my Firefox. I don't have them in my dock, although I could put them there as we described last week. But what if I wanted Google Chrome to be my default web browser? And what does the default mean? That basically means that when you click on something that requires a browser, and you might not even be on the internet when you do that. So just as an example, I'm going to come down to the Mail app. Here is, or let's just come down to what's new in macOS. I've got a couple of links here. If I click this link, it's going to open Safari to do that. And this is what was new in High Sierra a couple of years ago. When I clicked that link, because over here in the system preferences, Safari is the default web browser, it opens Safari to go to that link. If I come down and change this to Firefox and go to the same exact email with the same exact link, it's going to open Firefox down here in this little right-hand section. Since it wasn't a permanent member of my dock, it has gone into the recently used section. And so it opened the same exact link in Firefox. Likewise, if I just come down one more and do Google Chrome, come to the same email, click the same link, it will open Google Chrome. You can see Chrome opening up in that lower right-hand section there as well. So that's what the default web browser does. Sometimes when you download these other browsers, Google Chrome, Firefox, Opera, maybe you've downloaded an extra browser and it has volunteered to become your default web browser, and you decide you're going to change back to Safari. Then where you do it, and let's go ahead and just quit Chrome, quit Firefox. All right. This is where you change it back. So you just come into your preferences, click on General, and change back from whatever it set itself to Safari. And by the way, you won't have all these choices. A few years ago, I installed a program called Parallels that lets you run Windows on your Mac. While you're running the Mac, you can actually have them both running at the same time. And for some reason, Parallels confused this and let it know that there's some other options. These might be web browsers, and they're not, but it wasn't clear enough to the system preferences to know that those other programs are not web browsers. So I've tried to remove that, and I can't figure out how to remove all this extra list. So if you know how to do that, you can post it in the comments. All right, next section down here. At about the same time they made the changes to the scroll bar in OS X Lion, they also introduced a new feature that you'll still see in the Apple menu when you click shutdown or restart. There will be you know what, I've got another user running, so it's not letting me do that, but there will be a little checkbox when you click shutdown or restart that says reopen all the apps, something like that. So when you do that, it requires a technology to basically save what you're doing in its current state for when it restarts the computer. And so they made this option to not close all the windows when quitting an app. So basically that choice when you restart or shut down requires that the windows that you are currently have open will stay open when you restart the computer. And so they made this an option to not do it on just a normal basis. And for 2 years, they were kind of proud enough of that feature to uncheck this default box. Basically, with this checked, things work the way you're used to them working. It's the way computers have always worked for as long as I've been using them. And so I'm just going to explain this for a minute. I'm going to leave it unchecked just while I'm showing you what that actually means. It is kind of interesting and it might work well for you. So I'm going to, as an example, and I think we saw this earlier, when I clicked on text edit, it opened up the last two documents that I had running where I had just started typing some things because I must have had this feature going. And I'm going to go ahead and close these. So this is the normal box that you get when you close an app. So when you click the red ball on an app, if you have not saved it, then it will pop up and ask you to give it a name. But I'm going to make a brand new document and I'm going to type some things. Now I'm going to quit text edit. So I'm coming up to text edit and I'm going to quit. And because this is a brand new document that I have not saved yet, normally what happens is it stops me and it says name it or delete it. So I'm going to quit text edit now, and it didn't stop and ask me that, and that is because of this little box right here. It's not checked. It didn't actually close the window. Even though the program is completely quit, it has saved that window in some secret location, and the next time I open text edit, that little document is going to reopen in its unsaved state, and it's going to be ready for me to type more things. And so the only time it's going to stop and ask me if I want to save it or not is if I personally click the red ball. So if I click the red ball, that closes the window, as we talked about last week. And so the program is now popping up and confronting me with a question: what do you want to do with this? I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to call this Mac Basics 2. I'm going to save it on my desktop. So I made that choice, or I could have chosen to delete it if what I'm working on is not important enough to me. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and save. I think after a couple of years, and probably because people were calling the 800 number saying, what is going on here? They decided to put it back the way computers have operated for probably the last 4 decades. That when you open a document, when you quit it, if you haven't saved it, it'll force you to save it. So let's open text edit again. We will do one more new document. I'll type some things and I'm going to quit. And it's basically not going to let me quit until I make a choice. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that one. But that's the difference between having this checked and not having this checked. So having said that, what about this other box? Ask to keep changes when closing documents. I'm going to go open that same exact document and copy all that text. Sometimes I open a document and maybe I want to copy a paragraph out. And what happens when you have something highlighted is if you accidentally touch anything on your keyboard, I'm just going to touch a letter, it will replace what's highlighted with what you just touched. And you might not necessarily notice that. Of course, in this case, I noticed it because it was the only text in my document. But if you have pages of information and you delete one paragraph, if you're not paying attention, the content below what you just deleted just slides up and it looks, just has all this text there. So you might not notice it. But if you have this box checked, ask to keep changes when closing documents, when I close text edit, it's going to stop me and ask me, did you really want to save the changes that you just made? If I'm thinking to myself, I don't remember making any changes, then I can just revert back to the way it was and it will not make any change to that document. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the next section. I'm going to close this window back here. Recent items. Believe the default for that is 10, and where that shows up is when you're in an app. I'm going to use Keynote as my example today because I use Keynote a lot. If you've been in our iCloud, either one of those two classes, you've seen me use Keynote. So I'm going to come up to the Keynote menu and actually move over to File right below, just to the right of Keynote, and the third item down is Open Recent. And so whatever number you have selected over here in the system preferences is the maximum number of documents that it will remember in this list. So if I had the default of 10, I would not have all of these documents here. The bottom 7 or 8 would not be here because it would have capped off at 10. And I've got enough room here to probably have like 40 or 50 things. I might have room for 50, although I don't personally have 50 Keynote documents. But if I did, it would have kept the list of these things until I reached 50. And the reason I like this is because I don't have to remember where I put a document. I usually am very careful about where I save things. I create folders with meaningful names and I save documents into those folders. But when a year has passed or 2 years have passed, I don't necessarily remember what I called it. You know, I might be missing a word or two in my brain, and so when I do maybe come up and do a search for it, it's not yielding results. But if it's something that I've used recently in the last, the last 30 documents, when I come up to the open recents, and this could be, this is not just a Keynote thing, this is Pages, Numbers, I think Word, Excel, and PowerPoint have open recent. Any program that saves documents has an open recent option. So anything that's in this list, the Sierra seminar, that's 4 years ago. So I was looking for that. I have no idea where I put that. So I just open this up, and here's the presentation. By the way, if you command click on the title of a document on the Mac, and by command click, I mean holding down the command key. There's a command key on the left and on the right of your spacebar. If you hold that down, I'm going to do that with my thumb, and click at the same time, then it will show you where your item is. So this Sierra seminar is in my Dropbox folder, which I don't really use much anymore now that iCloud Drive has become fairly robust. But that's where I put it. So now I know, but I didn't know where it was. So when I was looking for it, I didn't know where to look. And so having it in the open recent options was a very nice thing for me. So I'm going to go ahead and click the red ball to close that. That's what that is. And so we're going to switch over to this next thing, allow handoff between this Mac, obviously this Mac that I'm currently working on, and your iCloud devices. So your iCloud devices could include another Mac if you're fortunate enough to have more than one Mac. So if I had another Mac, I could be moving basically a task on this Mac to a task on the other Mac. But more likely it's going to mean move from an iPad or an iPhone. So I'm going to switch over to Johnny Appleseed's iPad. Here's the iPad. And let's say Johnny Appleseed is sitting on the couch and he is writing an email. So I'm going to come over to the email app and click it. And we're going to come up to the upper right and start a new email. We'll just come down to the body of the text. And in this case, since I don't want to type on the keyboard here, I'm going to use this microphone, which is dictating by the Mac. I'm not sure if we're going to have time to do this on the Mac, but the Mac can do dictating as well. I'm going to go ahead and click that little microphone. Dear John, comma, new paragraph. This is a test of handoff from my iPad to my Mac, period. I'm sitting on the couch and I just realized that I want to send you a document that I only have on my Mac, period. So I'm going to have to walk over to the Mac and pick up this email there. So I've started here, and so let's switch back over to my Mac. And in the lower left-hand corner of my dock, so here's the Finder, which is normally the leftmost app in the dock. In fact, it's kind of fixed there. So you can't put something to the left of it, except for this one instance where things will pop up that you're doing on your other devices if they're nearby your Mac. So this Mac is detecting that I've got something going on in the Mail app. So here's the normal Mail app icon. It's over here. But here's another Mail icon, and it's got a little teeny iPad on it. And when I hover over it, it tells me I've got Mail going on an iPad Pro 10.5 inch. If I was to click this button right now, it's going to go get this email and bring it over to the Mac. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And when I go over to the iPad, that email is gone from the iPad and it has basically handed it off to the Mac. So maybe I want to put in that little document that I've been working on here. I can take it and drag it into the document, or I could have done the little paper clip, and maybe I need something in my downloads folder that I don't normally have syncing with iCloud. Download folder does not sync with iCloud. So that would have been an example. Maybe I want some photos. Of course, I've got iCloud Photos turned on, so I've got the same exact photos on my Mac that I have on my iPad, but I actually have some pictures in my pictures folder that are not being synchronized. So maybe I wanted this picture of Steve Jobs talking about the cloud, and I dragged that over into this document. So anyway, let's click the picture, and I think I'm done. I'm ready to go back and sit on the couch again. So when I come over to the iPad, there's actually in the lower right hand corner another mail app. So I've got the normal mail icon on the far left, but then I've got this extra mail icon on the far right that has a little picture of an iMac on it. If I click that, it's going to go get that email back from the Mac, and it should have the changes in it. So it's got the two documents and the picture. So that's handoff. And so if you're on your other device and you're sitting near your Mac and you're opening various apps, let's try something else. Let's do messages. There it is. And the messages app has popped up in the left-hand corner of my Mac over here. So different apps will do that. Almost all the Apple ones, when you go from one device to another device, if you're sitting near your other device, then you'll see little things pop up and then go back down. So that's it. That's what handoff is. If you have no interest in it, you can uncheck that box, but I find it handy once in a while. So anyway, I'm not going to cover the font smoothing feature. This is not something I've really thought much about for a long time, and not something I've needed to worry about. But if you're curious about it, you can, anytime you're in one of the system preferences, and it doesn't matter which one you're in, there's a little question mark in the lower right hand corner of all these different boxes, these different panels, and that will basically open up a manual that describes all the system preferences that you're currently looking at. So if I was interested in font smoothing, I can get more information about font smoothing right here. Alright, so we're going to move over to the next system preference, which is desktop and screensaver. This isn't going to take nearly as long because there's not nearly as many things in it to talk about. So I'm just going to come over there briefly, but this one is divided into two sections. So this is unlike general, which had only one section. There were no little tabs at the top. This particular system preference is divided into two sections, desktop and screensaver. And so the desktop, this is where you get to pick what picture it is that covers your background. And Apple has provided a number of beautiful ones. They're beautiful pictures, but they're not overly distracting. They still kind of make your content be front and center. So you might, generally speaking, you want to pick something that's not going to make your content hard to find. Anyway, they provided a bunch of them. If you're using Catalina, the first three of them are what they call a dynamic desktop, which means that your picture is actually going to change the color during the day. So, for instance, this Catalina picture is going to have one picture in the morning, and then it's going to have a different picture in the afternoon and a completely different picture in the evening. Same thing with Mojave. They have two to pick from in the list here, but if you use dynamic desktop, there's more than two. It's like 3 or 4 or 5 even different pictures during the course of the day. So kind of fun. But you get to pick exactly what you want, or you can come over and choose photos that are from your own library. So I've got this photos section, and if I come down, I can actually pick a specific album that I've created in the Photos app, and I could say, you know what, I really like that picture. I want to make that picture my desktop picture. So you get to pick exactly what you want. It's like to me, this is a picture that's a little bit busy and makes it kind of hard to distinguish some of these things on the desktop. But you can pick it if you want to. Also, you can actually, if you don't keep your pictures in your Photos app, you can actually come and pick a specific folder where you might have some pictures kept. So if I go over to my pictures folder, maybe there's some family pics here. I could choose that folder and add it to the list, and here's some additional photos that I might want to be able to pick from. So I'm coming back to the main group here. I'm going to set it back to the Catalina one. Then I'm going to move over to the screensaver section. Most of the screens these days do not have the problem that screensaver was invented for, which is they don't have a phosphorus coating on the back of the screen that could actually burn in. I remember back in the early 90s when I started selling computers, they had the big thick cathode ray tube monitors. The back coating of the screen was phosphorus, and there were little scan guns that would fire and make it show different colors. And if you just left an image on the screen, like I've got this box right here that's sitting here, if I walked away and didn't come back until tomorrow, the outline of this box would actually be burned into those phosphors and kind of ruin the screen. So they created this thing to where there would be moving things on the screen that would keep those phosphors from burning in. And one of the things that we found out back then was that some of us like screensavers. We like it to where when we walk up to our computer or walk by our computer, there's something different going on there. And especially if you've chosen a photos category, this is the reflections one, there's a dozen or so different styles of pictures, and you can choose any one of these styles, and then over on the right you get to choose what photos populate that style. So I'm in the Catalina section, so if I wait an hour, let's just sit here and wait for an hour and see what happens. No, just kidding. Of course, you could set this down to 1 minute. So after that minute, if I don't touch the keyboard or the mouse, these pictures will start going across the screen. I've actually set up a hot corner. Let me just click this hot corners button to trigger the screensaver when I put my mouse arrow in the lower right hand corner of the screen. So if I put my mouse arrow down in the very, very corner, it will actually pop up and start showing. Give it a second, it's actually figuring out, since it's a new screensaver, it's figuring out the whole graphics setup of that. Perhaps it was just having to go retrieve those photos and prepare them so that this would be a smooth screensaver. So I didn't have to wait a minute for that to happen. It just started as soon as I put the tip of my mouse in the lower right hand corner of the screen. Now I'm going to touch the mouse now. And apparently I've waited too long because now it's asking me to put in the password for my Mac. This is a security feature. So I'm going to type in Johnny Appleseed's password. Where is that setting? Where's the setting where it asks for password? Well, that is not in the desktop and screensaver options. It is over in the security and privacy sections, this little house with the combination lock on the front. So when you go into security and privacy, it has actually 4 tabs at the top. In the general tab, there is an option to require a password. And Johnny Appleseed has this set to where if the screensaver or sleep kicks in, and sleep is an option as well, there's actually a sleep option in the energy saver settings. So these energy saver and screensaver kind of compete with each other. So you might never see the screensaver if your energy saver settings have a lower time than the screensaver. But in security and privacy, if either one of those things start after the computer's gone to sleep for 5 seconds or the screensaver has been going for 5 seconds, it's going to require the password based on this little checkbox. And you can require a password immediately, or you could make it wait longer to be able to do that. So if you make a change to it, it's going to make you type in your password, your Mac password. We call that the administrator password or Mac password. This is the one that pops up when I turn the computer on. And some of these options are disabled until I click the lock and type in that same password. So if you want to make changes to some of these system preferences, you have to unlock it before you can make some of these changes. So hopefully we're going to come back to see security and privacy and look at File Vault and Firewall and privacy. But for now, I'm going to come over to the dock section. And again, we talked about the dock a little bit in the last class, the very first class. This is customizable. In the dock preferences, you can do things like put the dock on the left or on the right. So if it bothers you at the bottom, you do have the option to move that. You also have the option to automatically hide the dock. So if you want the extra ½ inch that the dock takes when it's on display, you can make it go away. And by the way, let me move. I'm going to switch screens again and put up my keyboard. Command Option D, and I'm holding these two buttons down, and then I'm just reaching up with and tapping the D. Command Option D hides and shows the dock, and you can actually see it. You can see it. Let's move my arrow out of the way. You can see it checking and unchecking that box as I tap the D there. So sometimes I need the dock to go away. My personal preference is to have it showing, but sometimes I just need it to get out of my way, and so I can just reach over and do Command Option D, and it will make it do that. All right, there's other things in here. Perhaps your dock is too small for you. You can turn on magnification and make it be larger when you put your mouse down there. So that's an option as well. You can also hide this new feature down in the lower right. This is called the show recent applications in the dock. The Chrome and the Firefox and QuickTime Player. I've used Firefox and Chrome in this class, and they were not permanent members of my dock. But even though I've quit them, they are still showing up there, and that's because of this little box here. That was a new feature. I think it was last year with Mojave. Oh good, I have a notification that just popped up in the upper right-hand corner. We're going to hopefully talk about notifications as well. They took away my option to remind me in 5 minutes, and I'm really not happy about that. I clicked on the later button, and it's, whoops, maybe just clicking late. I just clicked later without doing the 1 hour, and maybe it will pop up in 5 minutes. We'll see. So anyway, if you don't like the little 3 icons in the lower right that are recent apps, you can actually uncheck that box, and they will go away. If you then recheck it, they won't come back until you start opening apps that are not in the dock. So then I want to mention one more thing in here, and that is this prefer tabs when opening documents. So you're probably familiar with tabs with your web browsing. If I open Safari, I've got actually 2 tabs going on right now. If I click the little plus over here, I've now got a 3rd tab, and maybe I'll open Charlotte Street Computers in a tab, or maybe I want to come over and open up Apple's website. So now I've got 4 tabs. This is something that's been around in web browsers for 15 years, maybe. I think Safari introduced it, or maybe even some other more esoteric browsers introduced that feature 15 years ago. And so basically what's happening here is they're offering that feature in more than just Safari. So for example, I'm going to use Pages as my example, and I'm going to open Pages, and I'm going to open my chairs document here. And there it goes. And if I do File New and make a new document, what normally happens, and we'll just use a sample report here. I'm going to go choose this modern report. It just opened up this document in a totally separate window. These 2 windows are not connected in any way. So what that means for me is it gives me some flexibility, but it also means these 2 windows are separate. So for instance, if I go into full screen with this document, I don't have access to the other document without doing a 3-finger slide to move over to this other one. And if I put it in full screen, it's got its own space, so to speak. And so I'm having to slide between these 2 different documents with my 2 fingers with the mouse, 3 fingers with the trackpad. I would like these things to be in the same window, so I can come up and merge the windows, and now these 2 tabs are in the same space. Or if I get out of full screen, they're in the 2 tabs are in the same window. So if you like that feature, you can tell it to happen more often. You could say, I want different documents in the same app to be in the same window all the time. You could change that to always. The default is when you're in full screen it will do that, but not when you're not in full screen. So anyway, you get a choice of whether your apps use this tab feature or not. Let's come over to mission control. I just demonstrated spaces a little bit when I was in Pages, and I clicked the green ball. It put my chairs document in a separate space. So when you go into full screen, that is what they call a space. And I just want to demonstrate something here. Actually, let's make another new document in Pages, and because I don't want to mess up, we'll do that modern report again. I want to work on modern report, and when I hover over this in Catalina, it gives me three options. In Mojave, you had to press and hold on the green ball to get these two options. But basically what this is allowing you to have more than one app side by side with another app. Basically two apps side by side in full screen. So if I just click the first option, it's going to take Pages and make it full screen like I did just a minute ago. But what I want to do, and I'm going to tap the green ball again, I want to open the Photos app, which I actually still have open there. And I want to have it side by side with Pages when I go into full screen. So when I hover over the green ball, it's going to let me put Pages on the left or Pages on the right and let me choose what app will be on the other side. So I'm going to choose the left. And so it has put Pages in kind of a full screen mode, and it's letting me choose the other apps that I have open. System preferences you can't put in full screen, so it's not available for that, but Photos is, so I'm going to click it. And so now I'm in full screen, and I've got Photos on one half and Pages on the other. And I can actually resize this by grabbing the little bar in the middle and make Photos a little bit smaller. I can still use the little slider on Photos. And so maybe I'm doing a report about lighthouses, and so I can take this photo and just drag it over into the spot. And let's double click on it, move it down a little bit. So anyway, you can have two apps side by side. This could be mail and Photos. It could be just use your imagination there. Any two apps that you might want to work on together in full screen, maybe Safari and Notes. You can choose those apps. And so I want to get out of this setup right here. I'm going to slide over with three fingers. So that was I just did a three-finger slide. That was swipe between full screen apps, swipe left or right with three fingers. So let me just doing that three-finger slide. I can also do a feature called mission control. So mission control, you slide up with three fingers, and I've got, that's interesting, I'm not sure what the login window is. Pages and Photos in one space. I've got system preferences by itself over here. If I open some of these other apps, Mail, Photos has actually got its space there again. So when you do mission control, and it's got its own little icon, or you can do its little gesture, three-finger slide from bottom to top, or on the mouse you can do a two-finger tap. So anyway, that's just a quick look at this feature called mission control. So it's got a little icon for itself down here in the dock, but I usually use the three-finger slide. Anyway, let's move on. Boy, I don't want to skip Siri. We did talk about Siri in the first class. So Siri you can get to, let me just click it real quick. I'm showing it in the menu bar, which means it's showing in the upper right. When you click that, what can you do? This will bring up all the different things that Siri can do. And I would recommend spending some time looking at this list and see ways that Siri can help you. Also, I just want to mention very quickly, we talked about dictation on the iPad by clicking the little microphone. On the Mac, you can get to dictation by clicking on the keyboard options in the system preferences. And one of the tabs is dictation. So it's either on or off. And if it's turned on, then you will be able to invoke it usually by pressing the function key twice. I'm using the function key for something else, so I've changed this to the left command key twice. I'll tell you what, let's try a new email. Switch views here again. I'm going to tap this command key twice. Tap, tap on the left command. All right, it's working here, period. So this has popped up, this little microphone. As long as this is visible, then it is listening to you. And I want to see my face there, period, new paragraph. So that's where you get dictation on the Mac, is by double tapping the function key or the command key or whatever you have it set to there in the keyboard preferences, period. And I need to click done before it will stop listening. All right, let's move on. I just want to mention a couple of things very quickly. Let's talk about notifications. That thing that popped up in the upper right hand corner for me a few minutes ago that said this is a notification, that popped up because I had set a reminder for Monday morning, and I told it that I want all my reminders that I have time set for to pop up as an alert. An alert will pop out in that corner and stay there until you click one of the two buttons. You also have the option of things popping out in the corner but going away after a few seconds automatically. That's called a banner. So I've got mail set to do that. If I were to receive an email right now, it would pop out in the corner for a minute even if I was in another app. Or there might be apps that you don't want to do anything. So for instance, maybe you don't want your email to show up at all in that corner. So you could change this to none. So you get to go through, if there's an app that's bothering you, you can change it from its current setting to one of the other two settings. So the right hand corner is bothering you, you can adjust that. The only thing you can't change is your operating system popping up and saying there is an update available. So App Store is not an option to change. The system itself is not an option to change. But all of these other apps are optional. And then last but not least, certainly, is security and privacy. We were in general for a few minutes. So we've got that option to require a password after sleep or screensaver begins. I have my personal Mac remembering a lot of passwords. So if I didn't have the whole Mac itself protected, then someone walked up and grabbed my laptop while I'm at lunch, they might be able to get in and see my passwords, but I've got it also set to require a password after a short amount of time. So anyway, that's why that's important. File Vault can make your entire contents of your hard drive or your flash drive inside your Mac have an extra layer of security. And I would use this one with caution. Unless your stuff is so sensitive that you would be in big trouble if someone found these things and was able to recover them, you might want to heed this warning. It says you will need your login password or a recovery key to access your data. In other words, if you go out of the country for 6 months and you left your Mac at home and you come back and you can't remember your password, you're not going to be able to access your data at all. So we've actually seen that happen to a few people, to where they forgot what their login password was and they didn't set a recovery key, or they did, but they forgot what that recovery key is. So we were not able to recover their data because this is so powerful. Firewall, I just want you to know this one thing. When you buy a new Mac, your firewall is turned to off. And if you get one of those fake calls where they tell you that your computer has been hacked or something, and if you give them the time of day at all, they will probably take you in here and they'll say, look, someone has hacked into your computer and turned your firewall off. Well, that's a lie, because when you bought your Mac, it was off. And they know that. They know that most people have their firewall off, which is fine when you're at home on your own Wi-Fi. That your Wi-Fi itself, if it's got a password, is a type of firewall. But if I was going to a motel or a coffee shop, we can never do those things again. You can turn on your firewall, and that will give you an extra layer of protection. And then last but not least, here is the section on privacy, where you can determine what apps get to know things about other apps. So for the top one, for instance, is allowing certain apps to know where you are. Your Mac can figure out where you are based on the Wi-Fi hotspots that are around you, and you can allow or disallow those apps to do that. Or you might not want certain apps to be able to access your camera and your microphone. So you can go see in this list which apps have requested that. I was recording my screen and I wanted my face to be recorded, so I'm allowing QuickTime Player to have access to my camera and to my microphone. And also iMovie and GarageBand want access to my microphone, and Zoom wants access to my microphone. So anyway, sometimes you have to come into these things and allow the system to have access, or allow an app to have access to certain components of the system. So anyway, we're probably going to need to wrap up here. We just want to thank you for coming. We appreciate your business here at Charlotte Street Computers. Have a good day. Hopefully we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.